Do you know that birdstrike is the most dangerous, or can be said to be one of the dangerous effects of the surrounding to aircraft operation? Basically happens in flight or at low altitudes or even when aircraft are on ground. But what are we doing to prevent, reduce, or make it non-existent? So today on Aviation and Other Jargons, we'll be talking about birdstrike. I'll be looking at the causes, some of the causes we've detected or we've been able to find out, and some of the solutions we think will help to reduce, terminate, or take away all those effects so that we can have a safe mode flying and be rest assured of safety when we're going forward in an aircraft. So, you know how it is. It's Aviation and Other Jargons. My name is Golf Oscar. So what is birdstrike? Birdstrike is strictly defined as the collision between aircraft and birds during takeoff, landing, or during the en route phase of flight. It is said to occur more during the day and at night, mostly, except the predominant one that is seen at night might be due to bat, which is predominantly active at night, or owl, which are both birds that you see at night. And it's said that 53% of birdstrike happen during the months of July and October due to the basic migration within birds at this point in time. We know that birds' movement or migration is seasonal, and they tend to move around during the time that they feel enhances more food for them. So most times during these months of July and October, it is predominant that there will be migration from where there is less food to more occurrence of food, and that is why we have them at this point in time. And when do you think birdstrike happens among flights? 61% of birdstrike is said to be predominantly active during the landing phase of a flight, meaning descent, approach, and landing roll, while 36% is said to occur during the takeoff, run, and climb out portion of flight. The remaining percentage is said to happen when aircraft are en route, and that happens at high altitudes. And we all know just few birds can go on that altitude, so most times it's species specific at that altitude for birdstrikes to happen. So during birdstrike, you have bird hitting the fuselage, which is any part of the body, the windscreen, predominant one, which is the engine, and it could be said to be engine ingestion, whereby the birds are sucked by the blade into the engine, causing severe damage or total shutdown of the engine. And one effect that causes is cascading failure, is what happens when birds are ingested into the engine of an aircraft, thereby striking one of the fan blades, displacing it, and thereby displacing others, till the ripple effect causes total breakdown of all the fan blades, causing an effect which causes total shutdown or blackout of the engine, which is called cascading failure, which is the most dangerous part or effect of birdstrike to aircraft. Jet engines are generally vulnerable during the takeoff phase of flight, and they are at high speed and low altitude, where most birds are generally found. So most times the takeoff phase and the landing phase is said to be the most significant part of flying because of the effects of birds at this altitude. So what can be said to be the causes of bird strikes or the presence of bird activities around the aerodrome? Number one, the reason why you see birds around is because they migrate to where they can actually feed themselves. So sometimes grasses that are friendly or are edible to birds, when they are in abundance, can bring the birds closer or can be attractive to birds. So most times where you have bushes or after a rainfall whereby worms, centipede, insects, and the rest of them are present around the airfield, the birds comes along to come and feed, causing enough of bird activities, which increases the occurrence or the opportunity for bird strike or a threat to an aircraft. Another one could be bad drainage. When you have a dumping site, a bad drainage in an airport, stagnant water, that may bring birds to the aerodrome. Because where these things are, you see dead things, dead insects, animals, worms, and different things. And hey, they are just like human beings. When they need food, you go to where you can find food. So when we have some of these things around the airport and we don't keep our airports clean, the drains working perfectly, we don't have stagnant water, the grasses are well cut down to the minimum to make sure that some of these plants that might be edible for some species of birds will not be okay for them to eat, then we are inviting more birds and bird activities, which will bring the attraction of birds to the airport and eventually more presence of birds or bird activities increase the chance of bird strikes. Another thing I said to cause bird activities, the way buildings around the airport are built. When you build gigantic structures in hangar with open roof superstructure whereby birds can actually hide, build their nest and reside in, then more flocks or the one giving birth to can actually come out during period where they need to feed and start moving around and increasing the risk of bird activities. Because when they need to look for shelter, they will all run towards where the nest is or where they can hide. But when we try to arrange or get our buildings in a way whereby it will be hard for birds to run into and reside and build a nest to call an abode so that they can come out anytime and be dangerous to flight, then hey, we need to adjust that and see how building structures, aprons, hangars, the roof designs are created in a way whereby everything will be okay. Birds will not be on the increase, or the activities or the building will not be a point of abode for birds. And again, airports that are built relatively far from major cities tend to have more bird activities. Research has shown that where you have large parts of land, then there's high risk of grasses, tall grasses, stagnant water. Even after rain, you have insects, you have centipede, you have different kind of carcass around. Somebody or a rodent might feed on another one, and being dead might attract birds. But when you are in a city whereby everything is limited, the chance of this occurring is limited. I'm not saying airports in major cities are free of bird activities, but they are reduced. Those that are built far from the major cities, and you have large expanse of land, grasses, bushes, and you know what bushes causes. Bushes come with rodents, animals, and when they feed on each other and their carcass, birds can feed on carcass, can feed on insects, and then there is rain, there is stagnant water, there's so many insects, then the birds, in quest for them to feed, keep circling those areas and make it an abode. So probably during the planning, we might decide to look at building airports closer to the cities. But when that is not possible, fumigation of those fields, keeping the grass low, and regular cutting of the grasses and making sure everywhere is clean can reduce bird activities. And also, airports that are built near farmland, refuse dump, reservoirs, water plants, anything that might bring forth insects, rodents, or industries that might attract rodents, chance of bird activities, increasing also the effect of bird activities or bird strike. So as much as possible, when we are locating our aerodrome or airports, we should look at how we can site them in places that we don't have all these complications. So many methods are being put in place to reduce or probably totally eradicate bird activities around the aerodrome. But researches have been going on year after year to find a better way to ensure that these birds' activities are reduced. But sometimes it comes to my mind, there are so many things, we have so many resistant buildings, resistant structures. So I wonder, can we actually build an aircraft that are bird resistant? Like, can we just look at some chemicals or compounds or things that birds don't like and use them in the composition, in the building or modeling of aircraft? Or can we probably fly aircraft away from direction of bird activities? Or can we be warned on board our aircraft when there is a risk of bird, like when aircraft are close, for us to know, oh, 20 miles ahead we have bird activities? Some of this come into my head and I think, can it be done? But hey, there's nothing technology cannot do. But I'll be telling you some basic solutions that are being done now. One is flame firing. You have a kind of gun shot into the air, basically not to kill the birds, but to scare them away. So for how long do we do the scaring of birds away? You shoot the gun, flame firing, takes them away, then in some minutes they're back. It's effective, but do we have to continuously do that? Another one that is used are lasers. Lasers are fired in the direction of birds, but just few birds, that is species specific, that are scared of lasers. But while we're trying to do that to scare the birds, lasers are also dangerous to pilots. So we have to be careful whenever we are using lasers to scare birds, because we are also trying to see that flight crews in the flight deck are not blinded by lasers. So we cannot be trying to reduce something and increase another thing. So specific caution must be taken when we are trying to fire lasers to scare birds. Another one I've read about is propane exploders and pyrotechnics. Propane exploders and pyrotechnics are being used in some aerodromes, and it's been known to be a little bit effective to take or scatter or to reduce actions of bird activities. But no matter how we use this, if the surroundings are not attractive to birds, it's going to be effective. But when we keep shooting all this and the surroundings are attractive to birds, from what I talked about previously as the causes, then it's going to reduce the efficacy or the effectiveness of the propane and pyrotechnics. Bioacoustics, or playing on some distress sound, sometimes fighting some birds, is just similar to the way scarecrows in farmland rattles or scare some birds, but not all. Sometimes some sounds or music kind of scare them away. It's just like human. You might be somewhere and suddenly you hear a big sound. The first reflex action is for you to take off, and to some extent it's said to have worked in some airport and in some areas. So it's not a bad deal for you also try that out too in our different locations. And in an airport in UK in 2012, Song of Tina Turner was played, and it was seen, observed, and known to be effective. Playing of the songs at a loud volume scared some birds, was able to effectively take them away from the airport, from the vicinity where the music was playing. It could be a siren, but this was done in 2012 in the UK, and that song, the Tina Turner song, was able to scare those birds away. And Purdue University did a research that colored aircraft easily attracts birds. During their research, it was noticed that shining colored or brightly colored aircraft, which is similar to the color of the sky, tend to have less bird strikes. And it was proposed that airlines should probably think of painting their aircraft in a shining color similar to the sky, whereby the birds might perceive it to be the sky and just avoid it like the flying clear of clouds. But dark colored aircraft is said to attract them, and the research shown that dark colored aircraft tend to have more bird strike than light colored ones. And a Japan carrier, ANA, made a research and found out that the drawing of eyes around those areas that bird activities are prominent ensured that birds avoid those stages. And some line of the aircraft were painted, and it was observed that bird activities reduced drastically when jet planes were decorated with eyes at those points that bird activities are prominent, especially closer to the engines, the windscreen of the fuselage of the aircraft. So it's what they found out, and that has worked for them. So we could be prominent in some areas or effective in some areas, but to us, is it actually effective? So I think the best solution in solving bird activities is for us to sit, look at our weather, look at our environment, sit down and see what is predominantly the cause, try and look at how we can eradicate that, and then some of what I've talked about could be improved on to increase safety and to reduce bird activities in line with reduction of bird strike. It cannot be said to be totally shut down, but it could be reduced.